So Cam, if you want to go ahead and kind of start from the beginning for everybody and just kind of show what you do.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. I've just got this up on GitHub, which is kind of like a Google Drive for code. So this is publicly available. Anyone can go to this link that's up here and view it if you want to, or you can just watch my screen. That might be easier. But I'm also free to help. Any questions that people have afterwards, feel free to reach out. So here's all my code, but it's also on my computer. So we'll go over here. The code that we are going to spend probably the 20 minutes talking about is this ScraperPie file, and it's up publicly, like we said, on GitHub. But my name's Cameron. I work at Glance. Glance helps companies do persona-based recruiting. So we basically target passive candidates, and we use Python to do that. So I've been writing Python for maybe a year and a half now, and writing software for maybe 2.5 total. So hopefully I can answer all the questions. If not, I'm sure someone else can. So
one question, Cameron, is this being done in a text editor of some type?
Yeah, it's in Sublime.
So if anybody doesn't have Sublime, I can certainly help show you that as well. But Sublime is where you can type up your code before you execute it in Python.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Okay. So I'm using Sublime. I would recommend Sublime to anyone that's wanting to get started. But going forward with this, I'm going to walk everyone through super basic from the point of just getting started until the end, where we'll spit out all of the kind of leads we're trying to get. For a reference, here is the URL that we're going to grab all of the information from. So I'll just go ahead and show everyone what we're grabbing here. And it's super simple, Scraper. We're going to come in and we're going to grab all of these names. So we're going to get Catherine, Jim, David, Alfred, all the way through. And some of the other examples that I've included in here let you grab all 89 pages of this. But for our example, we're only just going to grab the first one, so you can keep it super simple. So I put notes in here that should help anyone if they get stuck at all. And I tried to keep it as simple as possible. So in Python, we define a variable just with this kind of syntax right here. So I chose to define our URL of where we're going to get our data from as URL. We're using the request library, which you use or you import with this import statement. And we're using Beautiful Soup, as I think that, if I remember correctly, that should have been installed before. If not, I can also go over that. Do we need to go over that?
Yeah, well,
okay.
If we can toward
well, I think we can go after that afterwards, but as far as importing, it'll be as part of the install that we sent out to everybody. So we can go over that offline after this.
Okay, I'll help anyone if they're stuck on that or anything. So
hey, Cam.
Keeping going. Yeah.
Hey, I'm so sorry. But just a quick question. You said from BS4 import Beautiful Soup. We usually say import and this particular file. Here you're mentioning from BS4. Any particular reason behind that?
Yeah, so I tried to put in this paragraph why, just so we keep it super clear. But starting right here, we're using two packages. They're called requests, shown with the import request statement, and Beautiful Soup. We imported the entire request library, so that's why we kept just we wrote imports, and we only imported a portion of the BS4 library, just the Beautiful Soup part. So that's why we're saying from this whole library, import just Beautiful Soup, so we don't need all the extra stuff.
Now, if you follow the other directions, from that were sent, if you load them on your Linux, will have the entire Beautiful Soup, the BS4 file, as well as Beautiful Soup called out on that. So when you go to execute this in Linux, it will work.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cool. So down here on lines 33, we're going to use the request package we imported above. To do this, we create a variable R here. And we define R as telling the request package we want to go get the contents of this variable URL, which we defined up here. So really what this is doing is just setting some kind of background work for when we get started down below. Now that we've defined R, we can call it. It's kind of a fancy term to make R run or turn it on. So we're going to set a new variable called HTML content equal to r.text. You probably are going to ask why we have R here and then we have r.text down here. We're adding the .text to the variable in order to get all the contents out of the web page. So we told Python we want to go to this URL up here with this command. We're going to get everything from that URL, and then we're just going to get the text off of it. So we don't need images, for example, just the actual text printed out. So now we're going to get started with actually scraping the content. And I tried to include in here a few notes about what we're actually doing. We're going to use the BeautifulSeed package we imported on line 10. The package sets the syntax of how to use it, so just follow this syntax. I guess it's less important to know why it works and more important to know that if you write it this way, it will work. So you put this first action as HTML content, which we set up here. It's just telling Python that we want to go get all of the data from this URL and convert it to text. And then the second action, this LXML, is determining which parser we're going to use. Really, you shouldn't really worry about that at all. That's a kind of very advanced function. It just determines how fast our code runs. So just stick with this one, or you can use another one if the installs had a different example, but it's not very important. So last thing we want to do, and then we're going to have completed our scraper. The last thing we want to do is we want to make it print out the results so that we can see if it worked. And to do this, we're going to use the print function or command in Python. You can try doing this in your terminal by typing Python, which will open the interpreter. I'll do that right quick so people can see. So if I type Python now, you can see how it tells me Python 2.7, and then it gives me these 3 arrows. That means that I'm in the interpreter. You don't really need to know what an interpreter is other than it makes your code run. So you can use the print command in here and do something like print hello world, and Python will say, okay, and spit back out hello world. So that's what we're going to do down here. But we're going to, instead of print hello world, we're going to tell it to print out what we scraped from our URL up here.
One real quick, Cameron. Who's ever is trying to type along with this, could you mute yourselves unless it's Cam? Thank you.
Don't think it's me.
No, it's not you because it's typing when you're talking, so go ahead.
Cool. So just to clarify, in this example above, we told Python to print out, or we're telling Python that we're going to print out the URL here, and we're going to get all the information here. We're going to just get the text out of the URL here. Then we're saying, okay, BeautifulSeed, log all of that for me. And then down here, we're telling BeautifulSeed that we want to print it all out. So that is really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code that should return you 10 leads or 10 designers, I think it's designers in this case, information. Little bit more about how this is working. There's this find all action in BeautifulSeed where you can inspect an element and choose that element. So to make this easy, I'll actually just show you how I got that H2. So I come over here and I'm back in the web page that we're going to scrape, and I right click and I go to inspect, and then I click this little guy over here in the corner, select an element in the page to inspect it, and I clicked Catherine's name, and then you just see this little tag right here, H2. So if we go back over to the code, this is saying, BeautifulSeed, please find all of the contents that have an H2 tag. And then in here, we are saying print out the first 11. And just so we're clear again, I came to Chrome, I put in the link that I wanted, I used this little tag thing right here to come in and click on what information I wanted, and then you can see how it's highlighted blue right here. So you would just you just get this H2, and that's what I filled in on this line 61. So maybe if yours was, you had a new website, you had H3, or maybe you had a P tag, or you could do anything. I mean, this A tag would work as well. Really just use this little guide, click on the element you want, look for the one that's highlighted blue, and most times that'll work.
Real
that
quick
should be
note,
it.
that little thing that popped up there, Sublime's going to ask you to buy it every now and then, so just click cancel. They're just their way of trying to get you to buy something that's free, just so you're aware of that. And if anybody wants to have a class outside of here or call about the inspect element on websites, just let me know and we'll put together a short little class on that as well.
Cool. Yeah, so hopefully that was clear. I'll show one last time and then we'll actually, oh, no, I don't. I need to click right here. Can I do that? We'll just do it in this tab. So we load the Chrome, and then you right-click, inspect, and then it brings you up this little guide. So that's, you can have a whole class on that, but that's for anyone that's curious. So now that we've basically written our scraper in 5 lines, and at this point we're going to be able to run it. So we just do Python, and this file is called ScraperPie. So I'm going to write ScraperPie, and I might have spelled it wrong. Let's see. Yeah, so there we go. It returned my people that I wanted. Jim, Kenneth, another one. So that's super simple. I didn't clean it up at all in this example, so I put some more information down here that says there's a lot you can do in addition to this. I've attached some other files. So, like, for example, bulk scrape. This is an example of how you could get all 89 pages. So you just fill that number in and then run this code, and it will go through that link we have and open up all the different pages and grab all of it for you. Really not good to practice doing that. You'll get tagged as scraping pretty quick, but I tried to attach a few other examples that should help people. So bulk scraping is one to look at once you've got scraper down. This one, clean scrape, cleans up how it spits out the data here a little bit. But if you can stomach looking at the H2 class, this is a scraper to grab 11 leads in 5 lines of code, and should be super helpful for anyone trying to get started. We can run some of the other more complex ones, or I can answer some questions if anyone's confused. What do you think's best?
Well, you run it in Python. Now, if somebody wants that information you scraped, how do they get it out of Python into some other format that they can use?
Yeah. So let's see. I would suggest, Beautiful Soup, log to CSV. All right. So there's a way where you can import. I think it's CSV, and you do something. I don't know off the top of my head how you would write it, but it's roughly similar to, instead of having this print, you would basically be saying save soup.findAll like we had right here. You'd be kind of in an English way of saying this, save to, and then you would have a file name, so maybe leads.csv. And then you would run this, and instead of it printing out in the console, it would save it to a file over here. I didn't actually write one that does that, but should we do that?
No. I just want to make sure people understand that once you get that content in Python, because everybody's like, okay, it's in Python, now what I do? But yeah, there's a line of code where you can export it to a CSV, And typically that's what you're going to want. And for the code lines, if you use that inspect element, you can say pull H2, H3, whatever information you're trying to pull. So if you're trying to get the name and the phone number and the email, you would use those different lines when you did the inspect element on that site.
Yep. Yeah, and it would just roughly be like maybe the next one was an A tag, and you want to grab the same kind of like that. That should work. I don't know if it will. We can try it and see if we get some more information. Yeah, there we go. We got their location, I guess. So not exactly what we're looking for, but that's how you would do it, just filling in with the same inspect.
And just so you all know, when he says 11, 0 when you're in code is considered an element. So 0 is actually kind of be your number 1 if you think about it.
Yep, I tried to put that in here. Hopefully that's clear.
Right.
Yeah, but that
just in case they didn't want to read.
Yeah, that's something that I messed up for a while when I was getting started. I forgot to count 0.
You'll get an error code if you try to get too many records. If there's 89 and you ask for 95, you're going to get some errors, especially when you go to export it. It'll look kind of funky as well. But this is kind of a high level of what Stephen's going to teach next week. I'm going to be sharing this with him so he can get a little bit of a precursor of what we're doing here. I'm trying to get ahead of him instead of behind him and trying to explain what he said. I think this makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I wrote some commands that might be helpful in this new machine file. So for anyone that has gotten Ubuntu installed and needs to know what to do next to run this code that I did, you just run all of these commands. So come in and copy and paste it and do like that. And then as soon as it's done loading, do the next one and go all the way through them. And then you should have everything that I just shared on your own computer, and you can run it with this last line. So that should be helpful to everyone. I can definitely answer questions if something wasn't. And like, see, that should run. Yeah, there we go. So this just ran on a version of Linux that I have. Exactly the same way.
Yeah, and you're typing this in Linux terminal, so it's just another version of if you're running a Mac, this would be something you would do in Sublime and in terminal. So, and that's what he's working off of here. But you can also load Ubuntu onto a Mac, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think you're just better off to use Sublime, and Python will know to look at the Sublime file. If somebody needs help setting up Sublime, let me know, because it's also, there's an element in there you have to pick what language you're typing it to, because it's got 12 or 15 different choices in the Sublime files. As far as
so.
I think it's But anyways, I can help anybody that has that. The Sublime 2 is free. Sublime 3 will cost you like $89, and Sublime 2 works just as fine. So, like I said, occasionally it'll come up and ask you to buy it, but you just click cancel and it won't affect it.
Yep.
So open it up to anybody's questions.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't show my pen key. Does anyone have any questions? I'd love to help if anyone's confused.
And you can *6 to unmute yourself if you are muted.
So I think you might want to remind people that when you're doing that copy paste, in most command prompts, you're going to need Control. It's not, or Shift rather. It's not just a simple Control C, Control V.
I didn't remember that. Good job calling me out on that one. Cool. Anyone have other questions?
Now's the time while he's here.
You had talked about possibly being marked as a heavy volume scraper unless you slowed it down. I'm wondering if you could show how you can add a time delay on that to help counter that.
So it's kind of funny. I was writing this last night and got tagged like 20 different times when I was testing it. So in one of these examples, I wrote how to do it. Oh, yeah. So in this bulk scrape, you add. I'll compare these right next to each other so we can look at what the difference is. So hopefully that's helpful. So the lines that are different are this R request get URL. This one we didn't try to hide at all that we're scraping. And then down here, we have this headers element that is different. So you see this R equals request.get URL. We can grab this element right here that I included, and it will run right here as well. There's no, that'll work. And what that's doing is it's telling, gosh, what did I do wrong? There we go. So this headers is basically simulating how someone would actually be opening maybe a browser, and it's got all the different options. So that's one way you can hide it. Another thing I've done before is I use this VPN up here that will hide your IP address. So last night I had to get that because as I was testing it, I got to run it like 3 times and then I was blocked. So I started hiding where I was. There's a bunch more ways you can do it, but if you're going to scrape a website 1 or 2 times, that's what I would suggest. If you're going to do it every day, then there's some ways that you can hide it better. But generally not a good idea to scrape a website every day if you're asking for, I think this website that we have right here has 90 pages of 12 people. So probably not good etiquette to scrape that every day. But that's how I would do it if I was going to tell you to scrape it every day.
And typically you're better off when you scrape is to scrape once, export the information once you've gathered it to your CSV, work it, give yourself 7 to 10 days for even going back. But typically sites are not going to update that often with additional information. It'll typically be minimal unless you go back to that site and see a completely different format. Then you can do that there. But typically when you're scraping sites, when we're looking for people, you don't really want to go back to it over and over. So you want to make sure you write the scraper right the first time.
Yep. And
make sure you're gathering, so you've done the inspect element and know which lines you want to pull.
Yeah, it was real quick last night. It was maybe the 3rd or 4th time that I ran the scraper. They figured out I was scraping and tagged me. So I would suggest getting it right the first time and saving your information.
How do you know that I'm sorry, this is new to some of us. How do you know that you're tagged as a scraper? What's the alert that tells you that?
So right now, if you run the code, it will run and it will spit out this information. Last night, I was trying to run it, and it would basically, when I would hit run, it would come up with something like this, connection refused, or God, I can't spell. Connection refused, connection rejected, it would spit out, and it was what that error code meant was they had figured out I was scraping. So any website can track you based on where your IP address is. Basically, that's how you're accessing the internet. So I got this rejection tag pretty quickly, but if I used a VPN, that's one click. They didn't know I was doing it. So
if you go to public Wi-Fi, they will stop you.
Yep. They didn't.
Yeah,
the code just stopped working. I mean, that's how I knew it was being rejected, and it was spitting out connection rejected.
Typically, the scrapers you get from Chrome are ones that are trying to gather as much information. They're written that way to grab you as much information at once, so you're not having to go back. So that's sometimes where those can be useful. But if you find a specific site and you don't have OScraper or some of these others on there, this is a good way to do it. But I will tell you, be careful being on a public access Wi-Fi or something like that, because if you do it more than once there, they'll know the IP address and will stop it. Yeah. You won't get to 2 or 3 times. So typically, you'll be lucky if you get it done once.
Yeah, so you can hide where you are, but just do it the right time. Do it right the first or second time. And if you're only asking for a little bit of information, you don't usually get tagged. I got tagged last night asking for 89 pages worth of 12 people. So that was a pretty big alert on their end of what's going on our website. Stuff like that. You can optimize a little bit.
Now, what we can do on one of the other classes is show how to scrape just a basic database. If you get a large data file, you want to pull information, but this is scraping websites that we have for this demonstration here.
Mm-hmm.
I think what might
Does anyone else have questions?
Well, what might be useful, since so many of the different fields start off with an H2 tag, but the class is different, if we could specify how you can add the class to what you're finding in Soup, so that you can just be pulling out specific fields separately.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. I don't know if I've ever done that, but it shouldn't be that hard. Let's see. I certainly can do another example later and show how to do that. I think you just add this. That looks like it. Yeah. So for what we have right now is this soup.findAll, and then we're going to add this class element. So would it be soup.findAll? Then we've got H2. Is it dot? No. Class title. Weird. Yeah, it would be something like that. I don't know exactly how to do it off the top of my head, but I can. I'll just put it together tonight and reshare it.
Yeah, I think you got the right thing. You just need the specific value for that class. It's not title in this case.
Yeah, that's probably a good one. A good way to catch that error. Yeah, so that's how I would do it. Let's see if we can.
As you can see, he's doing what Steve and Kip's referred to about looking up on the internet, Google it and information. Typically, if you go to request, how to do this in Beautiful Soup, you'll see it'll give you the code that you need to put into your editor.
Yeah. I would say that the majority of the code I write is searched on Google to find how to write it, and then I rewrite it. So you don't have to feel bad about searching for stuff like this.
One thing I would caution everybody is don't try to copy and paste it, because a lot of times these things can be written in a document to where the quotations are curved instead of straight quotations, and the systems can't, system won't read or understand or recognize the curved quotation marks. It's something that's kind of basic programming, but a lot of people see something and try to copy it. It's usually better to type it for memory's sake, but also type it so that it is being properly put into the editor.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, Python. I don't know if this is going to work, but we can try it. Do I save it? Looks like it did. Yeah. There you go. So that's how I would do it. So that was an example of how you saw how it popped 3 times. That went through 3 pages on the website. So we have this range here. So you could put 5, you could put 89 if you wanted to. And it found all the elements with H2 tags and then this class name right here that we just looked up using the inspect. And then it printed it out. So that's an example of how to do it the way you wanted.
Yeah, that
went way better than I thought I was going to. I was kind of surprised that worked.
So everyone else, if you figure out what the start and stop points are for the different fields you want, you'll notice that they all contain some unique class value inside that tag, and then you can name your variables to match what the field name is that you want to pull out later, so it's a little easier to follow. So you could have, for example, name title as the field name, and that's going to grab the person's name and title as you see in that larger font on the page, and then another one for company name, since that usually has its own tag. Well, here it looks like they all fall under the location class, so I guess you'd have the whole address block in one pull there. But the phone number and the email, those could be pulled out separately.
Yeah, so that's an example of how to do it. Obviously, there's a ton of different ways that you could clean it up, and you can make it better. You can make it store it, but as a super simple way to get started, use this ScraperPie file.
Yeah, I don't think you should have deleted those extra lines. Just comment them out if, or something, because those were useful.
Oh, where did they? Which extra lines?
It looked like you took out that whole class piece from the code.
No,
oh,
it's right here. Yeah, I'm gonna put it up on this. It'll be on that link, which we can share so everyone can find it. It'll be publicly available now, so it should be in. Yeah, see now it's up here. So anyone can go to this link up here and look at all the code that we talked about.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So does anyone else have questions? I can help if anyone does.
I guess not. So, I mean, this is on Git. If anybody needs any help setting up Git, or if you don't have it to be able to get to these, let me know. I'll try to help get you set up. It's pretty simple. And then Git also has, GitHub has videos on how to access, use them, and clone or download repositories, you know, information like this that you can have. And you can push it to your Sublime and back and forth so that the information, you don't have to copy and try to paste everything on there. So if you watch those videos, they're very helpful for getting you to use. If you watch the videos, you'll really like GitHub as a place to store code and use code and save things, which you find when they work, you put them in there, and that way you need them next time. You're just changing a few lines of code instead of rewriting it.
Yeah, I included in here this new machine file that tells you if you come to this, you can just run all these commands, and it will download this code onto your computer for you, and then you'll be able to run it. So hopefully that's helpful. If anyone gets stuck with it, ask. Can definitely help. Somebody was asking a question, and I cut you off.
Yeah, I was just curious if you had ever done any single infinite page scroll type sites like Facebook or maybe something simpler where you
I was going to say, don't mess with Facebook.
Doesn't have to be Facebook. I don't want to get you in trouble, but do you have?
I haven't done. So I haven't done anything that loads. You're talking about a website that loads as you scroll down, so all the information is not available right away. Yeah. So to not go too in the weeds, I would use something called Selenium to do that. Selenium simulates a user or a human actually scrolling through, and I would grab it that way. It's really similar to Beautiful Soup, but just actually opens a browser for you. So if you run the code, it'll literally open a new Chrome like this and then go to Facebook for you, and it'll look like someone is going through it. You have to be careful doing that because the sites are pretty good at figuring out that it's fake. But if I was going to scrape data from someone like Facebook, that might be how I would think about doing it. So Selenium would be what I would suggest.
I gotta stop putting myself on mute. Anybody else have any other questions for let Cam off the hook here and stop the recording? Okay, well, I'm going to stop the recording, and that way, if anybody has any other questions or comments, we can be good to go.